Close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine waking up to the smell of fresh milk on your front porch, the sound of your neighbor calling hello over the fence, and a day stretching out ahead of you with absolutely nowhere urgent to be. No notifications. No passwords. No endless scroll. Just a cup of coffee, a newspaper, and the quiet hum of a country that still believed, deeply and sincerely, that tomorrow was going to be even better than today. That world existed. It wasn't a movie set or a fairy tale. It was Tuesday morning in America, sometime around 1955, and for millions of families, it was simply called life. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a long, slow, and deeply satisfying trip down memory lane, back to a time when gas cost less than a candy bar does today, when your doctor came to your house if you were sick, and when children spent entire summers outside without a single adult checking on them every 10 minutes. This is the story of daily life in 1950s and 1960s America, the habits, the prices, the toys, the food, and the remarkable culture of trust that held it all together. Whether you lived it yourself or you are discovering it for the first time, I think you are going to find that this era has something important to say to us today. Let us start right where it mattered most, the home. In 1950, the average price of a family home in America was right around $7,400. Say that number out loud for a second. $7,400. For a house. With a yard. A real yard where kids could run and a dog could chase a ball and a father could spend his Sunday afternoon pushing a lawnmower in a perfectly straight line while the smell of something wonderful drifted out of the kitchen window. Now, a single working man in that same year was earning roughly $3,200 annually. That means a family home cost just over 2 years of one salary. 1. Not 2 incomes, not a decade of savings, not a terrifying 30-year mortgage that kept you awake at night. 1 working parent, 1 income, and a family could own a home, raise children, put food on the table, and still have enough left over to pile the kids into the car and take a vacation every single summer. Speaking of that car, if you happen to be in the market for a brand new Ford F-100 pickup truck in the early part of the decade, you would have driven off the lot having spent less than $1,500. And filling that truck up at the gas station? In 1955, gasoline was just 29 cents per gallon. 29 cents. A cross-country road trip was not a financial event. It was a weekend decision. You just went. You packed a cooler, unfolded a paper map on the dashboard, pointed the hood ornament west or south or wherever the spirit moved you, and you drove, windows down, radio up, the whole American landscape rolling out in front of you like it was put there just for you. And while we are talking about getting out of the house, let us talk about the movies. For 48 cents, you could buy a ticket, settle into a velvet seat, and watch the biggest films of the era on a screen so large it filled your entire field of vision. No pause button. No streaming. No watching on a phone while doing 3 other things. You were there, fully present, surrounded by your neighbors and your community, sharing the exact same experience at the exact same moment. There was something about that collective experience, that shared gasp, that synchronized laughter, that modern convenience, for all its wonders, has never quite been able to replicate. But to really understand life in this era, you have to understand the trust. Not the abstract, polite sort of trust we talk about today, but a deep, lived, bone-level trust in the people around you. The kind of trust that expressed itself in small, everyday ways that would seem almost unthinkable to us now. People left their doors unlocked. Not because crime did not exist, it did. But because the prevailing culture was one of mutual accountability and community watchfulness. Your neighbors knew your name, knew your children's names, knew your routine, and genuinely looked out for you. If something seemed wrong at your house, somebody noticed. Somebody knocked. Nobody needed a home security system because the neighborhood itself was the security system. Car doors? Also unlocked. And here is a detail that really captures the era. Many drivers tucked their keys up in the sun visor when they parked. Not hidden exactly, just set aside, because the social contract around personal property was simply different. That does not mean everyone was a saint, but it does mean that the baseline assumption people carried with them was one of goodwill rather than suspicion. And then there were the services. Oh, the services. Let us talk for a moment about what it meant to simply live your daily life and have the world come to you in the most personal, attentive, genuinely human way imaginable. Your doctor made house calls. If you were sick, really sick, feverish and miserable and not fit to drive, your doctor would pick up his bag and come to your home. He would sit on the edge of your bed, examine you in the comfort of your own room, talk to your family, and leave a prescription behind. The relationship between a patient and their physician was exactly that, a relationship. Built over years. Built on familiarity and care. It was medicine practiced at a human scale. And every morning, before most of the family was even awake, the milkman came. He moved quietly up the front walk in the early gray light, lifted yesterday's empty glass bottles from the front porch, and replaced them with fresh ones, cold and clinking and sweating with morning dew. The milk was real and rich, the glass was reusable, and the whole system worked with a kind of elegant simplicity that required almost nothing from the family except leaving the empties out the night before. Pull into a gas station in 1955, and before you could even roll down your window, an attendant would be walking toward you. He would fill your tank, wash your windshield, check your oil, and send you on your way, and none of that came with an extra charge. It was simply the service. It was simply what you did for people, and when it came time to pick up groceries, you did not navigate a cavernous warehouse designed to disorient you into spending more money. You went to a small, local shop where the man behind the counter knew your usual order, maybe had it waiting for you, and asked about your family while he wrapped your purchases in brown paper. The soda fountain next door was where the teenagers gathered after school, spinning slowly on red vinyl stools, sharing a milkshake with 2 straws, and catching up on the news of the day in the most low-tech, high-satisfaction social network ever invented. Now let us talk about the children, because childhood in this era was something genuinely remarkable and almost heartbreakingly free. Kids in the 1950s went outside in the morning and they did not come back until the streetlights came on. That was the rule. Not a complicated one, just the streetlights. No helmets, no scheduled playdates, no GPS tracking, no parent hovering at a safe distance to make sure nobody scraped a knee. They scraped knees. They climbed trees too high and jumped from heights that would make a modern parent's heart stop. They built forts and got in arguments and worked those arguments out themselves and came home for dinner with dirty faces and magnificent imaginations. The toys of the era reflected that spirit perfectly. The radio flyer wagon was not just a toy, it was a vehicle for small adventures, a delivery cart for a backyard business, a chariot in an imaginary kingdom. Mr. Potato Head, when he first appeared in 1952, came with an actual potato. A real potato from your kitchen. The face pieces, the eyes, the nose, the silly mustache, were pushpins that you stuck directly into the vegetable. It was tactile and a little chaotic and completely wonderful, and children loved it precisely because it was imperfect and alive in a way that plastic could never quite capture. And then there was the hula hoop, which swept the nation with such sudden and overwhelming enthusiasm in 1958 that manufacturers could barely keep up with demand. A plastic ring. That was it. No batteries, no screen, no instructions. Just a plastic ring and the challenge of keeping it spinning around your waist for as long as humanly possible. Millions of children, and plenty of adults, accepted that challenge with a competitive fervor that today's entertainment industry spends billions of dollars trying to manufacture. Meanwhile, inside the house, the television was undergoing its own quiet revolution, though in the 1950s it was anything but quiet. The television set was treated as a major piece of furniture, housed in a handsome wooden cabinet and positioned in the living room with the same reverence one might reserve for a grandfather clock or a prized bookshelf. It was not a disposable screen. It was an object of genuine wonder, and families gathered around it together, physically gathered, in the same room, at the same time, to watch programs that the whole household shared. Changing the channel required getting up off the couch, walking across the room, and turning a physical rotary dial. There were only a handful of channels to choose from, and if you missed a program, it was simply gone. There was no rewind. There was no on-demand. You either watched it when it aired, or you talked to someone at school the next day who had. That limitation, which would seem maddening to us now, created something valuable, a shared cultural calendar where everyone was tuned to the same frequency at the same moment. The kitchen was equally a place of cultural transformation in this era. In 1953, the Swanson Company introduced the TV dinner, a pre-portioned, aluminum tray meal that you slid into the oven and had ready in about 25 minutes. It was marketed as the modern solution for the busy American family, and it landed like a small revolution in American life. Suddenly, eating in front of the television was not just possible, it was built into the product. The culture and the convenience were designed together, and millions of families embraced it with enormous enthusiasm. But the TV dinner shared the Sunday dinner table with something far more elaborate and considerably more wobbly, the Jell-O mold. If there is one culinary artifact that captures the spirit of 1950s home cooking, it is the aspic. These shimmering, architectural creations could contain fruit, vegetables, nuts, or, and this is where things get genuinely adventurous, savory meats and cream cheese and olives suspended in quivering lime gelatin. There was a prestige to a well-executed mold that required real skill and a certain confidence in your guests' willingness to eat anything if it looked impressive enough. No Sunday dinner was complete without one, and no family photo album from the era is without at least one image of someone proudly presenting a mold that looked like it had been designed by a very committed optimist. As the decade turned and the 1960s arrived, The cultural energy of America shifted, and shifted fast. Something enormous happened when Elvis Presley appeared on television screens and radio waves in the mid-1950s, and by the early 1960s, the ground had been completely transformed. Young people had their own music, their own language, their own sense of style, and for the first time in American history, they had a commercial culture that was built specifically for them. When the Beatles arrived on American shores in February of 1964 and performed on The Ed Sullivan Show, the response was not just enthusiastic, it was seismic. Teenage girls wept in the streets. The music charts were rearranged overnight. Something irreversible had begun, and everyone could feel it, but the 1960s were not all rock and roll and optimism. Underneath the cultural excitement ran a current of genuine fear that shaped daily life in ways that are almost impossible to imagine today. The Cold War was not an abstraction, it was a presence in every classroom, every backyard, every family dinner conversation. When the Soviet Union launched Sputnik into orbit in 1957, the reaction in America was not just competitive pride wounded, it was existential alarm. The sky itself no longer felt entirely safe. School children across the country practiced duck and cover drills, crouching beneath their wooden desks with their hands folded over the backs of their necks, rehearsing for a catastrophe that their teachers privately knew those desks could do nothing to prevent. Families built fallout shelters in their backyards, stocked them with canned goods and water and radio equipment, and hoped they would never need them. The optimism of the era was real, but so was the anxiety that ran beneath it, and the two coexisted in a tension that gave this decade its strange and particular texture, and yet from that tension came something transcendent. The space race that began with fear and rivalry ended, if only for one glorious summer evening in 1969, with an image that united the entire human species. On July 20, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped off the ladder of the lunar module and placed his boot on the surface of the moon, and for a few hours, every television set in every living room in every country on Earth showed the same impossible, beautiful, real thing. A man. On the moon. Kang, the orange-flavored drink developed originally for NASA, became a staple in millions of American kitchens because if astronauts drank it, it must be the future, and the future, in that moment, felt like something you could hold in your hands. What made all of this possible, what quietly laid the foundation for everything that came after, was something that happened not on a launch pad or a concert stage, but in a laboratory, in 1958. That was the year the microchip was invented. Small enough to sit on your fingertip. Silent, invisible, utterly without drama in its arrival. Nobody lined up outside a store for it. Nobody held a press conference about the way it would change human civilization. It was just a piece of silicon with an electric current running through it. And yet that tiny, quiet invention is the direct ancestor of every computer, every smartphone, every streaming service, every piece of technology that defines modern life today. The 1950s and 1960s gave us so much. They gave us rock and roll and road trips and the moon. They gave us the sense that a single family, with a single income, could own a home and raise children and still have something left over for joy. They gave us neighborhoods where your door could stay unlocked because the person across the street was watching out for you, where your doctor knew your name and came when you needed him, where children were trusted to be children and given the extraordinary gift of unstructured time. They gave us the foundations of the technological world we live in, wrapped in a culture of simplicity and manual skill and genuine human connection that we have spent the decades since trying, in various ways, to get back. There is something in us that responds to this era, not with naive nostalgia, not with a wish to undo the progress we have made, but with a recognition that some of what was lost deserves to be remembered and honored and perhaps, in whatever small ways we can manage, rebuilt. The unlocked door. The neighbor who knows your name. The Sunday dinner eaten together, in the same room, at the same time, with no screens in between. Those are not just memories. They are a standard. And remembering them, really remembering them, might just be the most useful thing we can do. Thank you so much for being here today. If this took you somewhere good, if it reminded you of something you love or introduced you to something you had never known, please leave a comment below. I would genuinely love to hear what this era means to you. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a journey, and we will see you on the next one.